you want to become really, really boring? It's a really good idea to become the most boring person in the world like myself. I know I'm the most boring person in the world. I know that. Because you end up talking to yourself about anything reasonably practical and interesting. Any phenomenon. Because you can't actually get any really interesting thoughts from the media. So, if you want to have a happy life, even if it's a boring life, get away from the media. The media has become your life, right? So if you find another life where you paint, do a bit of gardening, go for a swim, go for a walk, sort of those things, you sit in the garden or sit in a park, reading a book, those sorts of things, do that beyond the media and get a life, and you become a really, really boring person and have this really boring life where there's nothing really exciting you about all those things, all those horrible things in the world that you can't do anything about. Unless you can vote, but that's who knows what you're voting for. You never say who you're voting for, but not actually ever explain what you're voting for, because if they did that, no one would vote for them, would they? No one would vote for anyone who actually said, well, we're voting for this, that, and the other, and to cause more poverty because we think it's funny. Or whatever they really think when they make up their policies, that then they take out and say something else altogether. Well, it's nothing to do with the end result of the policy in the first place, or actually in the intention of that policy's agenda, which is also, of course, to increase the corporate capital. And that means it increases its control, because capital is everything, and that's everything. Once you've got all the capital, you've got all of everything, in theory. So that's one of the things. If you're into that every day, where you're looking at the screens and or the news, or TV news, what? Hey, you look, it's a long, long time since we've actually heard anything new. War, and drought, and fire, and climate change. Where's the good news, man? Where is any the sort of good news? Like, they're actually really taking action on climate change, because first of all, they're going to make sure that poor people in America first will get a house and something a job to do where they can grow a bit of food for themselves, or something like that, something practical. So therefore, they can get out of the weather, and if they get the water provided by some reason or other, through recycling or whatever, they can get their own food, and they're sort of going along with getting themselves through a climatic change which may damage the sort of economy in such a way that people can't grow food or afford food, etc., 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 etc. So if you just look at it that way, and you can become a really boring person like that and think, well, there must be better ways than sitting around looking at a screen, never having your own thoughts on anything, because your thoughts are already, you're just reflecting what else someone else has said. So if you want to become really, really boring, you ignore everything on media, and you try to work things out yourself and do your own research. And once you start doing your own research, you can do your own research into anything. One thing leads to another. You find that one thing joins with another. You suddenly start joining the dots between all the different connective tissues in what's called a matrix. And then you can sort of say, okay, this is how it sort of works. And you can make up your own mind then. This is what democracy is supposed to be. Anything, any sensible and civilized, normal civilized, intelligent society should be made based on decisions created through a logical and rational appraisal of the effects in the future in a positive or negative way. That is, if you're going to affect the future in one way, which means that people are going to suffer and be poor because your economic prepositions and economic model, it certainly causes all the wealth to go to the wealthy and all the rich, all the poor to lose their houses. Well, that's sort of a thing that is extreme. It causes a lot of boredom amongst people thinking that might happen. And now, unless you can actually directly affect the outcomes of any of the things, what you war in Ukraine or anything like that, we could affect an outcome for it. Of course, all women in the world go on strike tomorrow and say, we're not doing anything, we're staying home. We're saying, no, yes, we know, we don't want any new clothes, we don't want a new car, we don't want a fancy house. We women are saying no to all that bull, because we want you to stop exploiting the world, exploiting the humanity, and simply stop the war in Ukraine, because all the women have had enough of all that nonsense. It might be sort of a less of a boring world then, because they start having a proper discussion about what's going on and what's important, the family or the money. What comes first, chicken or the egg? And because it's no longer really a real economy, because it's all fiat and it's all borrowed money and it's inflated currencies, inflated asset values, etc., etc. Because the only way to keep the things going is inflate the value of things that never really had any real value in the first place, and keep inflating them so they become impossible to afford. And the whole economy then is going around these things that are impossible to afford. So you've got this sort of strange alien concept of the improbability factor, where you can probably never own anything in your life even no matter how hard you try. And as Klaus Schwab said, the change, he wants to have a reset and you'll be happy in owning nothing. Well, that's the philosophical view. You can be happy in owning little as some of us, and we don't care less because we're very, very boring people. We're always busy, in other words. We're so busy writing or painting or gardening or something else, making something, fixing the old house up, whatever, going for a bike ride. We're so busy, we ain't got time for all that stuff on their little screens. The news and all that TV, all that sort of stuff was bombarded with miserable negativity that makes you feel horrible when, the only thing you can do about things is keep fit and healthy and as happy as you can throughout your life. If you do that, you'll be able to have a successful life regardless how rich or poor you are. It's very simple philosophy. And then you can be really extremely boring, not looking at little screens and getting into conversations about nothing. But nonetheless, you'll have a life other than that, and you'll get a real life in the end, what is evolved about you being a creativity person, asking questions about the universe, finding out your own answers, and creating your own lifestyles and your own ideas, and becoming your own asset to yourself. It's simple, really. Then you can become a really, really boring person like myself.